Hey traders, let's explore boxes in PineScript. So we can actually draw boxes onto our chart using our code. So this would be an example of a box that you can draw with the drawing tool. We can do the same thing with our PineScript code. And so let's jump into it. All I've got here is a blank script, except for this part here, where I'm checking, is this current bar the last bar on our chart? This is where we're going to draw our box. I'm only doing this so we don't have boxes all over the place. This is completely optional. Just like lines and labels, there is a limit to how many we can have on our chart at once. And just to make it easier to follow what we're doing, I only want one box on my chart. And so I'm just going to draw it on the very last bar on our chart. So the way we create a new box is using the box.control space or command space on a Mac, new. So this function is what we use to define our box. And we have a bunch of parameters here to work with. Let's start with the first four, which dictate where the box actually draws. So we can specify our left parameter. This is the left side of the box. It's a bar index by default. You can also base it on time. So you could draw a box around a certain time of day. We'll leave it as the default for now, just as a bar index. So if I just say here bar underscore index, that is going to draw from the current bar as our left side of the box. And then when we tell it to draw the box, it will draw to the right of the last bar on our chart. And before I continue, let me wrap this onto a new line because we're going to be dealing with quite a few parameters here. And now let's do the next parameter, which is the top of our box. So for this, I'm just going to set it to the current bar's high. It's a price value. Top and bottom are price values. I'm going to set my top to high. We'll set right to, for now, let's set it to bar underscore index plus 10. And what this will do is draw a box on the current bar where its top is at the high of the current bar and the right side of the box is 10 bars into the future. And then the final thing we need to specify is the bottom of our box. Let's just keep it simple and stick with the low for now. So now if I save my code, we should be getting a blue box. There we go. We're getting a blue box drawing onto the chart 10 bars into the future with the top and bottom of the high and low of the current bar. So far, so good. Let's look at some of these other parameters. The next one we have is border color. So I could set this to, let's try color.gray, for example. Save the script. That's what that looks like. Might be a little bit hard to see, but let's change the border width. Let's set that to 2 for now. Save the code. And now the width of our border is a little bit thicker. The next parameter we have is border style. So border underscore style equals, this takes a line style. Since the border is technically a line, we need to type in here line.control space or command space. And then if you start typing style, here are all the options we have for our box line styles. For now, I'm just going to set mine to dashed. Save the code, see what that looks like. There we go. And just to make this box a little bit easier to see, this is technically the last parameter of this function, but I'll set it now. Let's set the background color to color.silver. Save the code. And there we now have a silver box drawing with a gray dashed line border. Note that the box does begin in the center of the bar. So if we wanted to draw a box around this entire bar, we would need to set the left parameter to bar index -1. And now that will draw from this bar around the current bar. Now, the next parameter we have to work with is extend. So if I set extend to, and this is the same as lines. So if we type out extend.control space, this gives us some extend options. If I select right, then the box will extend to the right indefinitely, as you can see there. And if I set it to both, now it's extending in both directions. But for now, let's leave this as extend.none, and we'll just draw our box around the past 2 bars, 10 bars into the future. And let's add some transparency to our background so that it's not so brightly colored. Let's give it 60% transparency. Save the code. That's a little bit better. So that's essentially it for boxes. They're the main parameters we have to work with. This is obviously useful for things like highlighting trading session times, highlighting perhaps a higher time frame bar. For example, you could draw a box around the previous day's high and low over the next day's price action on your intraday charts. You could draw it around the body of a candle, for example, and highlight the body of a high time frame bar or something like that. There are many, many creative use cases for boxes. We won't explore all of them in this lesson because it's outside the scope of the lesson. I'm just showing you how we can create boxes. I've never actually used boxes in my own scripts, to be honest with you, but I imagine you can achieve some pretty cool things with them, especially relating to things like detecting market structure, support and resistance, and trading sessions. Now, there are also a bunch of inbuilt functions we can work with boxes. So for example, right now I'm in the scope of our if statement. If I say if the current bar's close is greater than its open, so it's a bullish bar, let's try tweaking our box a little bit. So if I just type box.control space or command space, we have a whole bunch of functions here that we can use. And these functions can basically just override whatever we created in our box as the default settings. So for this, I need to assign a variable name to this box. So let's call this what's in the equals box.new. And now I can copy this variable name down here, and I can say if the current bar is bullish, then we want to set box.control space. Let's change the background color. I need to paste in my box ID or the variable name that we assigned to our box. And then I need to set a color. So let's try color.new, color.green with 50% transparency. So now when I save the code, our box color will be getting overwritten by this if statement, and we're changing the color to green. Now I won't go over all of these box functions because they're pretty intuitive. You can basically override all of these parameters we just went over using these functions. And you can also retrieve values from your box if you need to. You can retrieve the top and bottom, left and right value from your box. And you can also delete boxes if you need to. All you need to do is pass in the ID. So if I get rid of this line of code here, now on a bullish bar, we will have no box drawing because we are deleting it. But on bearish bars, if we go out to a higher time frame, we are drawing it because we are not deleting the box on bearish bars. So that's really it for boxes. Before I wrap up this lesson, let's just have a quick look at how to deal with boxes when we set our X location from bar index to time. So if I say xlock equals xlock.bar time, and then put a comma in, now our left and right parameters are dealing with bar time. So what I need to say here is just time. This will reference the current bar's time of day as a timestamp. And then I can also set the time. Let's set the time of our right side of our box to the current bar's time plus, and then I'll open up some parentheses here. And let's add 60 times 1000. That gives us 60 seconds times 60 will give us 1 hour. So let me save the code and see what happens there. There you go. You can see that we are now drawing our box 1 hour into the future. And if I multiply this by 10, we will then be drawing our box 10 hours into the future. There we go. So if I drop down to let's drop down to a 4-hour chart, our box gets a little bit smaller. If we drop down to a 15-minute chart, it gets much bigger because we are now dealing with time instead of bar indexes. And of course, if you haven't watched my other lessons dealing with time parameters, the time value is in milliseconds. It's the amount of milliseconds that have elapsed since midnight of the 1st of January 1970. You don't need to know that. All you need to know is that if you want to add or subtract time from the current bar, it's in milliseconds. So if I put a minus sign here and save our code, we're now drawing our box to the left because we are subtracting 10-hour time from the current bar's time. Anyway, let me change that back. And that about sums it up for our boxes. I hope you found this interesting. If you find some cool use cases for boxes in your scripts when you start developing scripts, please let me know what you come up with. I'd be very interested to see what you guys build using boxes, since I've never really used them in my own code. I have some scripts that do similar things. For example, if I throw on my dynamic structure indicator, this is an indicator that detects support and resistance, or it attempts to detect key support and resistance levels in the markets. And you can see it's drawing things that are similar to boxes, but they're not quite boxes. These are actually plots and background color fills. So I'm just using the plot and fill functions to achieve this. But you could absolutely do the same thing here using boxes, and it might actually look a little bit better. So maybe when I find time, I'll look into trying that. But for now, that'll do it for this lesson, and I will speak with you in the next one. Take care.